All right. The time has come once again to speak as witches and wizards do. I'm Danielle Dubois,
And I'm Michaela Gaffinstone.
and we're your hosts for the Think Like a Wizard podcast. Welcome to season 2, episode 5. Most likely to be titled Here Be Dragons or something of that kind.
I love that. Here be dragons.
Yeah. Except for that's usually a warning, not so much a literal description of dragons are here, but this is going to be a dragon driven episode. And I'll give, even though I just gave you the whole premise of it, I had a dragon working with me for the last year or two. Fairly large one, blue colored, looks pretty fierce. And basically, although it finished its official duties a few days ago, today is basically its goodbye. So the spirits I work with, who also decided what to do on this podcast, have given it free run of this episode as a reward.
That will be interesting.
Yeah, it will be. So I guess, man, it's really, I just like feel it like right here, like it's present. You can't see it, but I'm pretty much pointing over my shoulders like there's a big dragon head looking over. So I guess we'll start. This is my understanding of dragons. If someone has something contradictory to it, that's fine. So basically, dragons are guardian spirits who are basically their job is to protect and give wisdom. Whether there have been any kind of physical manifestation in the world, I have no clue, but they're primarily a spiritual being. And yeah, it's really big. Like,
Well, I have always, since I was a young child, I have always viewed dragons as being protective
mhm.
and nurturing, and just ever present. Like they're just there to protect you, and they're a source of strength.
Right.
So I've always felt that way, and I when you're a teenager and what have you, you get a lot of pressure to leave the dragons alone, kind of
Yeah.
thing. But no, I've never felt the need to do that, and so I've never done that. And in fact, I have my little show and tell today. I have Dragon Magic,
Ooh,
which
nice.
is an oracle set,
Oh, nice.
and I already pulled my card just before this
Mhm.
session started, and the card is Dragon Queen, and it
Ooh.
says, "Rise up and embrace the might within, warrior, queen, mother, empress, witch. Stand beneath the stars, dance with the sunbeams, show this human world your grace and power."
Mm.
Well, I rather like that. So I have 55 cards here, and I shuffle them
Yeah.
and select the one that calls to me when it calls to me, and that's my thing until I do it again.
Well, because, and because we're co-hosts and because there's a reason why you're on this podcast. For the last few days, my brain has been draw some cards, draw some cards. I even went out and bought a new tarot deck. I couldn't find a dragon themed one, and I didn't end up drawing a card either. I guess that was your job.
The Dragon Tarot does exist.
Yeah. Now where I am, what I ended up with, and it's not dragon related, but it is based on the works of Guillermo del Toro.
Mm,
So it's
nice.
all cards based on the characters of from his movies. So
Okay. Well, I mean, there's so many different decks of tarot
yeah,
cards. It's like I have a deck of shadow cards as
right.
well, and every now and then I'll pull those out, and that requires a certain frame of mind and a
Yeah.
certain thing I'm looking for, and that's it's a whole event to pull that one out because it takes you in a direction that we don't comfortably go in typically.
Mm.
But I love the Shadow deck. It's an amazing, beautiful it's beautiful artwork, but it also just goes places that people often don't go. So I like to do that.
But it's good. So what were you asking yourself when you drew the card? Just you felt like drawing the card, or what was the setup, the lead up to that?
It was a very simple, what do I need to hear today?
Mm,
Which, sometimes it's a more complicated question, but I find the simple questions sometimes bring really excellent answers, really
that's
good
true.
responses. So, yeah, that was just a very simple question today.
Yeah. So just out of curiosity, because I'm in teacher mode, what's your interpretation of that card?
My interpretation was basically to not be sidetracked or feel disempowered by the negative energies that are going on around and the shifts, the world
Mm,
is on fire kind of perception. Um, that can weigh very heavily.
right.
And this is basically saying, you know, let that fall away and stand in the power of all the elements that I am.
Actually, that's interesting because in the last few days, I have been using my new deck and I've been trying to figure a few things out, and that's pretty much been the theme I've been getting as well.
Okay.
Just let what happens happening, embrace it, go with it, and just be you and go through. Let your strength let your strength show through.
Right. I have a sort of image of a phoenix coming out of a fire. It's like just let all that stuff fall away.
Hmm.
It's necessary to go through some of that dark stuff in order to unveil what's there for you. Like
Right.
it would be lovely if it wasn't that way, but then I think we all know, or if you don't know it yet, you're going to learn it, not you, but whoever's
Yeah.
listening, that if you don't experience the dark, you won't appreciate the light. If you don't get the negative side of things, then you don't understand where the positive is. And so that's pretty much how life is predicated, right? Some of our best learning comes from the mistakes we make and things that occur around us that can either be done to you or it can be something that you receive and you say, okay, let me transmute that into some kind of wisdom that's going to be helpful for me, for others, whomever. Doesn't matter. It's
Yeah.
just, it's a thing that needs to change in order to be valued.
Mm. I like the way you worded that. The thing to be received and transmuted into wisdom, because it's true. I always tell people you can be a victim of something, or you can be someone who just happened to have gone through a hard situation.
Oh, 100%. I mean, if if I'm introducing myself in a work kind of way to someone
Mm.
and they say, okay, how did you get where you are now? What led you on that path? Well, one of the big things that I do is behavior, right? I'm a behavior science person, spent a lot of time learning that. And it began when I was about two because I grew
Mm.
up in a very unsafe environment
Right.
and I needed to know what people were going to do next so that I knew if I needed to run, hide, like what did I need to do?
Mhm.
Fight, flight, freeze,
Right.
fawn, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And so I learned it out of necessity when I was very small, before I could even articulate
Mhm.
anything, really. And then as I grew up, it changed into a curiosity of, well, I'm living in all these different countries. People do things differently in different places. We
Yeah.
want the same basic things, but we tend to perceive how you get there differently depending on culture, background, experience, yada yada. So I've been on this lifelong journey of learning about people's behavior. And I could sort of cite all the awful things that happened that made me want to do that. But I honestly feel that's not the point. The point is that I actually took it and went with it and said, okay, this is something I'm going to be an expert in. It
Right.
began from necessity and it became something that I love to do. Behavior is everything, even if you're lying
Yeah.
down, you're behaving.
Yeah.
So, what I like to know is why? What are you trying, what are you working for? What are you trying to get to? And if it's not working for you, then how do you do it differently? And that's it's like Sherlock Holmes, I'm doing all this sleuthing with this, and it's become something I love to do. But the origins were in a very tough place. So if I hadn't had that pretty horrendous childhood, I wouldn't be who I am now, and I wouldn't know the things I know, and I wouldn't do the things I do. I wouldn't be me.
Well,
So
that's
it's a thing, right? You can be a victim, or you can take it and say, okay, how do I make me out of that?
that's right. I'm trying to say, Dragon keeps poking me, but he agrees with what you're saying because it's true. Like the bulk of the course I'm currently teaching, even though right now the whole center of it is divination tools, but because you need self-awareness to do a good divination,
Yeah.
basically the core of what I'm teaching could be in any class. It doesn't have to be divination tools. It can go straight on into a psychology course because it's heavy work on emotions and your subconscious and what motivates you to do things and what adds to your motivations and takes away from your motivations as well. So that in this case, so you can do a clean reading without interfering with it.
And also, it's very helpful to know what your intention
Yeah.
is. And sometimes your intention can be obscured from yourself if you're not self-aware. So I think clarity, like you said, clarity will fit in any lesson, but it's important, especially when you're dealing with things unseen. You're going to divination, you're going into energies, you're moving things around, shall we say.
Yeah.
You really need to be clear on your intention. Otherwise, things could go awry because the wrong ingredients are being used. And I don't mean necessarily literally, although it could be, but also just you're bringing the wrong thing to the party.
Yes.
So intention is key.
It's a very good point. Incredibly good point. It's funny, this weekend when I got my new deck, I was also looking at spell books. It was like
Mm.
spells to be done during the moon, spells for love, spells for relationships, everyday spells, spells for healing, spells for. I was just looking through the whole thing, the witches encyclopedia, the whatever. Like, but it's funny because I thought to myself, I already know what my practice is and I know how it works. So even if I started doing spells, it wouldn't matter because, like I said before, the spirits just go, nah, we're not doing that. Even if I did do everything, if I did the rituals right, they would be like, still not happening. You do it all you'd
So
like, but we're not doing it.
one of the things with spells, because I actually have the books you've just been
Mhm.
mentioning. I think I've got them all. Um,
Right.
and I don't necessarily use them all, but I love to look through them sometimes, and they might inspire me to do something a little different, or I may actually do the thing on the page. It doesn't matter. I mean, I could write my own book and then somebody pick it up and they do what I'm putting down there. I mean, it doesn't mean it's the way to do it. It means it's a way to do it. But what it is offering to the person who is sort of seriously looking at doing spells, again, intention, absolutely important to be clear on that. What, do you need permissions for this? If so, from whom and from what? And, be really clear on all of that stuff. But at the heart of it all, it's a focus of your intention. It's a place to focus your energy, your mind, all the things. And that focus itself can be hugely rewarding. It can open all kinds of doors. Whether the spell works as intended or not is a whole other matter, and it depends on a gazillion things. And I couldn't begin to say do this and it'll always work. Like you cannot say that, but the focus part is something you can always access. You are muted somehow. You've just gone silent.
Oh,
Okay,
sure.
there he is.
Oh, okay, yeah. Microphone was a bit loose. So yeah, what I was gonna say. So like I already have basically a system already that I was taught directly that they want me to use. So if I venture forth into someone else's, they're like, We already gave you something. Why are you being greedy? But I do agree with you. I do like looking through other people's work to get inspiration or to see how they handled something because it still provides inspiration.
Absolutely. And it's more knowledge on a subject that's interesting. So you don't have to do everything you read or do everything that you think, right? It's just here's a source. And sometimes I'll just open a book and see
Hmm.
where it lands. And that can be an interesting experience. Or I have a book of symbols, and it's a huge tome, but I like to flip through that sometimes. But before I do that, my system is to make up my own mind first, and
Right.
then I'll look and see what the book offers.
Hmm.
But I want to know what I think before somebody else tells me. I like to operate that way as much as possible in life because once you receive somebody else's opinion, that is pretty much inevitably going to color whatever you come up with.
Yes.
But yeah, that can be a fun approach.
Yeah. Well, and that's another reason why I choose to work primarily on someone's subconscious motivations and there's like in how to work with your subconscious because I don't want in the end my thing to ruin anybody else's thing. In the end, it's actually so my student I alpha tested the program with, I had said before she quit halfway through, but now she's kind of making a return. But with the question she's been asking me lately, I'm like, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go on a journey of discovering all these other systems yourself, and you're going to come back. You need to talk to me about them, obviously, because I'm not a good teacher if you don't sit there and take questions. But I said to her because she was asking me so many questions about people's different ways of doing things. I said, well, go explore them. Take what I've already taught you and go into the next things and see how it feels for you. Because like I said, I give a good foundation in your basics of how to work with energy and how you affect energy and how energy affects you. So I said, well, go out and now look at all these other things that are piquing your interest right now and see how it works for you.
Sure, because there can be different ways to channel that,
Yeah.
depending on what you're doing, depending on the day, the month, the year,
Yeah.
the thing you're trying to achieve. Like it's mutable. It doesn't stay, this is you may have a whole system going on for you
Mm-hmm.
that morphs with you kind of thing. But for
Right.
most people, there's going to be different things that will apply at different times. And I always find it interesting when somebody tells me, no, I only work with water. And it's
Right.
like, okay, why? Have you looked at anything else? I'm just curious. It doesn't matter to me. If you just want to work with water, that's cool. But what are you not working with that might actually complement the work with water or take you to another level? Like, what are you missing by narrowing that whole thing to I only work with?
Mm-hmm. It's funny you say that because I've actually, in my practice of using elements as the main focus, one of the people I had taught this to, or at least gave a foundation of it to, her strong suit was earth and fire. But there came a point in her life she couldn't deal with them anymore. She just wanted nothing to do with them. And the whole, well, it was, no, sorry. Her whole issue was with earth and water. She couldn't deal with them anymore. But earth was her primary. This was the thing she lived by, breathed by, moved around. This is the same person who, when she had to do earth, like deflected so, and, but it was funny. And I could tell. So I ran her through a few exercises just to see how she's reacting to the elements. So basically, anything that you can consider to be connected to the material world elements, like water and earth, she couldn't deal with them at the time. There's just too much stuff going on in her life, and she wanted nothing to do. She just wanted to escape into the spiritual. So her go-to elements became air and fire, and
Okay.
it was pretty interesting to see because given that Earth was her primary, and she was tired of basically the material world, dealing with stuff from the material world, she couldn't. Because I was going, okay, we're gonna just to get through the paces and I wanted to see how she was doing. I said, okay, you're going to do Earth. And she just froze up, but not like as in freeze up, as in I'm being stoned, but as in I can't touch this. It's
Right.
not dealing with this right now. I said, all right. And then figure out that's the more ephemeral elements that were the ones she was working with at the time, the only ones she would have any kind of connection to.
Yeah. And I just find it interesting to the way it works for me is to try different things depending on what I'm being called to try.
Hmm.
So I've done some shamanic training as well, and I continue to do that.
Yes.
And that takes a different direction as well. And it's not instead of anything, it's as well as. It's
Yeah.
very it's a lot of internal work. So on the outside, you don't see a whole heap going on, but there's a lot going on, and you can use it with other people. I have done,
I'm
but
familiar with that life. Everything
right,
on the outside doesn't look like there's a lot going on, but down the inside, it's like, or
there's a
even
lot
in the
going on.
more invisible aspects of the world, it's like there's
Yeah.
like storms happening, things are being
Yeah,
shaken.
and you can use it to help other people through things. And I've done that, and I will do more of it. But it's another aspect of embracing all that's coming my way, if you will. So I don't have a fixed. I always practice this way, or I only do that. I might put the tarot cards down for
Mm.
like a year and not look at them, or I might be looking at them every day, and it depends. Or maybe I'll switch out tarot for oracle, or I might look at none of them and be focused on the pendulum for a while. And it's just there's all kinds of things to play with, and it's just a case of being aware enough to go with the flow, quite literally. What's calling to you? What do you feel drawn to? So
Mhm.
when someone says, well, is this one better than that one? No.
No,
None of those things are better than
absolutely
another
not. You're
thing.
right. It's whatever you're attuned with at the time, that's what works.
Uh-huh.
Like, even with me, my normal go-to elements are water and air. But lately it's been earth and fire. So
Right.
actually, because it's weird, because as far as my brain is concerned, water and spirit, that's how I am. That's how I should be moving through the world. That's everything should be going on. But pretty much, if you look on my history and the way people would describe me, earth and fire would be the better match. But yet, you got to be paying really close attention to realize it's actually water and not earth.
Mm.
That's in play when you think it's earth in play, and that it's actually air, not fire. But the subtlety between the two is very like it's a very fine line in how they're used. Me for the water part with the earth, I tend to describe, water freezes into something hard like ice. So sometimes when you're thinking is earth is really ice,
Right.
but yeah, it's funny.
It's such an interesting world to get into and explore. And I would invite the listener to definitely be open to exploring and just, be open to see what works for you. Like if you're sensitive enough, it's a bit like being a spider with the web and you've got your legs on the web. Which one's vibrating for you? And
Right.
go check that out and see what that's like. But just because you found something that's resonating right now,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean that that's it. You've arrived and that's your thing forever.
Yeah.
That it could be the case, but it's unlikely. I think some people limit themselves too much too quickly, and then they get a little frustrated with why isn't this working? And it's like because it's time you did it differently. It's time to try something a different way. Um, and you'll only know that when you know that. Like as with so much that we talk about, it's like can't really give you a sign per se. You will simply know, and
Yeah.
that's you got to trust the knowing.
Well, that's the thing, right? Everything. What am I? Sorry, I'm doing the same thing like last time there because it's like right here, right? So when it's feels like it wants to say something, I got to kind of take a second to listen. It's not really pushing for anything right now. I'd say I think maybe to stop what I was about to say. I'm trying to think now what does it want next? It's
Oh,
not used to these interactions. Sorry, what was that?
one of those threads that
Yeah.
disappeared, like I
Yeah.
had the other week. That
Yeah.
was bizarre, but it totally went away, and then
Yeah.
it eventually came back. But that doesn't
Well, I
happen
think
often.
part of between me and it is I'm thinking like, okay, I've got a lot of experience working with dragons, including this one I'm working with four right now. But this one is going to be gone after this, so I'll be back to three. Actually, it's leaving to make way for something new.
Oh,
Plus, its job is done, so I don't. Well, I think that actually ties into the having a human teacher, but I'm not quite sure how their duties match.
Well, maybe you don't need to know.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking because I already full well know the teacher shows up on their own accord without me asking for it when the teacher is ready.
Hmm.
So I actually have a bit of a, like I said before the call, I was feeling kind of like weighed down and stuff. But I think part of it is because I don't know where to go next. Like there is a heavy energy, but there's also, I'm also thinking of like, there's going to be a gap where I have one less teacher basically at the
You think
moment.
so?
Yeah, that I'm aware of, anyways. I mean, I'm always learning from something, and I can always
Uh-huh. You
theoretically
know,
have a teacher of any given moment, of any given persuasion, who, even if they realize they're teaching me or not, that's pretty much the nature of my existence. But and when you get to this, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know
I
why it's
think
not even to talk about this,
I
unless
think
it's trying to.
one of the most important things anybody can really learn and take on
Mm,
board is let go of knowing how.
yeah,
And either I've said that on a podcast with you before, or I just had a really big deja vu on that one.
yeah.
But
Well, I think we've spoken
the
about it before.
okay, good.
We talk about this kind of thing a lot, so
Because the knowing how gets you bogged down
mm,
in one direction that's possible and where that information came from, it's got to have come from something already known, right?
yeah,
Either past or something somebody said to you, but it comes from a place that's known. Whereas if you're looking for how, that
mm,
implies it's something in the future which cannot be known. So you have to let go of the how
yeah,
and just it is, I'm ready, what let's go.
yeah,
And that's how it shows up. And it will show up that way whether somebody allows it or not.
yeah.
It's just a lot easier to receive if you go with the flow.
It's funny. Okay, so you guys listening can't see this because there's no video version of this, but I'm going to show it to Caleb. So this is basically what the dragon is doing behind my back. He's basically giving me the basically
Ta-da!
the see, look, she's got it. She's saying,
Right. So the hand gesture was like a
yeah,
ta-da, there you
yeah,
go kind of thing.
yeah. So it was pretty funny.
Yeah, but I
Yeah,
mean, that applies to anything in life, right? Absolutely anything, whether it's spiritual, physical, material, not. Um, if you focus on the how, it's it's almost like digging your heels into mud while you're being dragged forward.
yeah,
You're still going to go forward, but it's just going to be a bit more of a pain than it needs to be.
yeah,
Whereas if you just take that footstep and allow the stair to arrive as your foot lands.
yeah,
You've seen those images. That's how it works. That's how everything works, in fact,
yeah,
because the future, you can you can imagine yourself being the person that you want to be in the
mhm,
future, like what your ultimate goal is. You
yeah,
can imagine yourself in that place. And it's a really powerful thing to do. While you're imagining yourself in that place, what actions does that person take? How does future you show up? And then you start taking those actions now in order to get there, but you don't know which ones are going to work. You just have to take that trust step and the how will arrive. And sometimes there's a lot of how not before you find the how.
well, yes,
And that's okay too. The trick is to be steadfast and really understand that just
mm,
because that one didn't work and that one didn't work and maybe that one didn't work, you're that much closer to the one that does work.
yeah. And I will, for the more pragmatic minded people in the group who worry about mechanisms, if you think about what Michaela just said, you're training your subconscious what not to do. Your subconscious won't repeat those steps because your subconscious doesn't want to keep doing those things. So the more you do things the wrong way, and the more you realize it's wrong, your subconscious will go, okay, we're not putting resources into this thing. We're going to know when the time comes for the right thing because we've seen the wrong things. So we know how to recognize what we're looking for.
Yes, and also when something doesn't work, that's
Mm.
where the gold is. That's where you can discover,
Yes.
ha, it didn't work because this thing happened, or at least that's my best guess. So
Hmm.
then you can investigate that. And what comes to mind, love him or hate him, doesn't matter. Elon Musk,
Right.
when he has SpaceX going up, he gets excited when those suckers blow up, right? And he starts writing a whole load of things because to him, he's that much closer to getting it right. He's that much closer to perfecting what he's working on. So it doesn't upset him the way you could reasonably expect
Right.
it to when billions of dollars,
Mm.
blow up. He's just like, that lasted 16 seconds instead of 10. We're doing something better, right? And he gets excited about that. So that's an example. Another one I can think of is Richard Branson, who I
Right.
do admire. I think Richard Branson is awesome because he's absolutely self-made and he didn't come from money. He literally started with a paper round and worked his way up. But what he has that I admire is he has this attitude of, I'm going to do this thing. And other people will tell him, it's not possible, nobody's done it. And
Mm.
he just gives that beautiful big smile of his and says, yes, I know. And then he goes and does it. And sometimes it fails spectacularly, like his attempt to run the world in a hot air balloon. But he just sort of dusts himself off and says, well, okay, let me try that again. I'll try that differently. But he doesn't take failure as being a problem. It's just another way not to do a thing. Thomas Edison, I believe it was him who said, I didn't learn how to make a light bulb as much as I learned 1,000 ways not to.
Mm. Yeah.
Those
Or he
kinds
learned
of
how to buy the
things.
patents from several different people, but still, that's not the
Yeah,
point.
whoever it can be attributed to, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. But it,
I know,
it's
but yeah, that's what I mean. The saying is
yeah,
sometimes though I'm a stickler because it's weird in history. You get things attributed to people, or
yeah.
how to put it, right? There's the official story, and then there's what actually happened. And it doesn't
Oh,
mean there's
now
any kind of duplicity meant or any kind of attempt to mislead. It's just this is the only one you can confirm. So, like the Wright brothers, right? When it comes to flight,
right.
they had a report. They had reporters present to document, whereas every other rumored flight before that, the person was alone or the people were alone, so there was no documented. So you kind of, for historical purposes, you have to go with what you can show.
Yes, and I think sometimes it's not so much who said it
Mm-hmm.
as, that might give you a little context, which is what I was going
Right.
for with the light bulb thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the point really is the person who started this thing off failed a lot of times first, and that
Mm-hmm.
was how they learned to
Yeah.
do it right.
Right.
So I don't imagine the internet was created overnight.
No.
Microsoft certainly wasn't. And yet somebody, and we know the people involved in that, but I mean, they had this dream, this image of what they wanted to do. And you can bet they had no idea how, because it hadn't been done before. So if we're going to evolve in this lifetime on in this particular
Mm-hmm.
go round, if we're going to evolve, then we have to do it by doing things we haven't done before.
Right.
And by definition. And that means not knowing the how. So
Mm-hmm.
anyone listening who's really focused on, yeah, but how do I do this thing and how best to achieve this goal? It's like, doesn't matter. Just what's your best guess? Go do it.
Well, that's true. Like that's how to put that. Yeah, because all right, why am I being stumped on this one? All right, the dragon thing. Okay. It's got the old hand on the shoulder. Just let it go for right now. I'm like,
Okay.
fine, all right, whatever, whatever. I do wonder though, like, no, that's not it either. All right. I guess part of me wants to run the show, but it's not happening. There are things I was thinking about discussing for the topic, but I guess those don't matter.
Okay. Well, we
That's
can go with the flow. That's what I've been talking about for the last little bit is
yep,
just, who knows how it's going to go, but it'll do what it needs to do.
yep. It's funny. It's always funny when you work with spirits, right? Because they have ideas in their head as well, just like we do. And I mean, of course, they're doing it from a different perspective and all the appropriate caveats to go with it to differentiate between being in the physical realm and the spiritual realm. But yeah, I don't know if he had. Well, no, he said he has a plan for the call for this podcast. I don't know what it is, but okay.
Okay. Well, something that just came to me
Yeah.
is a sort of heads up, I guess, for people listening. If you haven't been in this line of investigation, shall we say, and you're new to it, be aware, be very aware that not every spirit that shows up as with a friendly, smiling visage is actually friendly and helpful. So it's something that you need to attune yourself to feel into, but
Yes.
just have the consciousness that just because something is in the spirit world doesn't mean it's okay, doesn't mean it's cool, doesn't mean it's got your best interests
Yeah.
foremost. So that's something that just came up to me to sort of mention that, because the way we talk, it sounds like everything's rosy and whatever comes your way,
Yeah.
you get to play with. But sometimes that's not ideal. I've had a few experiences that didn't go so well because I was unaware of the
Mhm.
undercurrent. And but that was some time ago now, but last time that happened. But you don't forget it. When it does happen, you don't forget it.
Well, that's the thing, right? I had my trickster teacher for 20 years, so that was my experience for 20 years.
Right.
So probably why, but I think, see, one of the things it was doing for me, or he was doing for me, because he's male presenting. So he was basically keeping spirits at bay because right now I have the attention of just like, I don't know what adjective you use to describe a bunch of spirits, a host or a haunting or whatever you want to call it, but a bunch. And I know from the descriptions I've heard that at least a couple of them aren't necessarily the nicest group of people. In fact, actually, what is it? One of the spirits that lives in a lake nearby. Like I always wondered why I always had like these weird feelings about the lake. And then actually one day I got sitting down one day and I'm like, I'm going to talk to this spirit. And it's like, not that the spirit was ever really bad to me, but there was definitely a sketchy vibe going on. I'm like, this is maybe keep this one at a distance.
Hmm. Yeah, but I think that's important to mention because
Yeah.
otherwise we could give a wrong impression that, if it's spirit realm, then it's okay. And not necessarily. So
Well, that's yeah.
you need to
Like
learn about putting protections out there for
yeah.
yourself.
And I did share in the first season, and that's of this podcast when I had an encounter when I was talking about fear eaters. The first fear eater I encountered
Right.
was transactional. You have a fear, I can help you with that fear. Let me feed off your fear. All right, perfect. The next fear eaters I encountered were just basically a bunch of ravenous creatures, but just to make it a little bit more complicated, they were being used on behalf to help me. But had they been left to their own devices, they would have devoured my fear whole and tried to produce more fear. But they were being used basically as a tool to help me with something. But had they been left to their own devices, I would have been devoured. So
Right.
it's just to show how complicated it can get. A well-meaning spirit can use a not so well-intentioned spirits to help you, but you got to be really clear and you got to be really prepped for that kind of work.
I would say it is at least as complicated
Mm.
in the spirit realm as it is on Earth. And
Yes.
it is, without question, complicated here. So when you add another layer, which is a full complication in itself, that's where intention and understanding your motivation for things
Mm.
is really, really important to be clear. So you don't, if you muddy the waters, you could get some mud slung back at you that you don't really want to deal with. So you have time. No,
Yeah.
there's no need to rush a thing.
Right. And we
Um,
got a thumbs up for sharing that.
cool.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that you don't have to rush. It's just let it unfold. That energy of trying to force a thing to happen, that backfires. That's not
Well, and that, you know what, I couldn't agree with you more. And again, with the, yeah, I just did my hands as in like, yeah, that's the idea. Keep going with it. Signal
Cool.
from the dragon. Yeah, it's right now I'm losing my train of thought. I guess it's your turn to talk again, apparently. I guess he likes you to talk, I guess.
Well, I do tend to go with the flow, so I don't know if that's a helpful conduit, but it's how I tend to operate. So,
Well, it's interesting because I was wondering how that would go. I mean, I know he works with me, but because we're doing this podcast together and we already have the understanding of, I've already clarified, right? You're going to find sometimes there's going to be some compulsions to do things that you may not have planned, but it's all part of the, as I like to say, the show's producers.
right. And that's something that I have learned to be very comfortable with is just it'll come, and what comes is what you get. And sometimes I will be doing a talk somewhere or a podcast somewhere, and somebody will say to me, "Oh, can you say that again?" And I'm like, "No, I have no idea what I just said."
Yeah,
You better have recorded it because I don't know, and I'm looking forward to hearing the recording because
yeah.
it just it goes that way. I think of the public speaking I've done so far. I've mentioned this before, I'm pretty sure, but when I did a talk at UCLA, I was unwell. I had
Mm.
2 weeks
Yeah.
knowing that the talk was coming, but I was sick as a parrot and I did not do any prep for this. I just showed up and I said, well, I'm going to go with the energy of the MC who introduces me and we'll see where that goes. And it turned out to be the best talk I've done so far. But literally from one sentence to the next, I had no idea what I was going to say. It just ran. And that takes the when you haven't done that before, it takes a whole lot of it's like a trust fall, right? It takes a whole
Right.
lot of cojones to stand up and
Yes.
do that. And once you've done it once or twice and it's gone well, then you can relax into it.
That's what I was going to say because one of the things I'm asked to continue talking about right now is the idea of doing your own personal thing. And it kind of goes back to me, like, because I'm purely trained by spirits, except for the one occasion, everything I tend to do, while it can line up with what's more, I don't know if this word works in this field, but a more standard way of doing things. So if it lines up, it lines up. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It doesn't matter if it does. All right. Joys of channeling. So I know for me personally, it's something I got to work on for myself. Is a part of me, not resentful, but a part of me is envious of people who kind of have a standard training. Not so much that I would change things because I see what comes with the way I was taught, and I see where there's things I don't do or that I've bypassed certain rites of passage, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, because I've got a more direct connection. If that's the best way to word that. Because I don't know everyone's connection. So to say mine, I have a better connection is really difficult to say. But
Yeah, and what's better, you know.
yeah, well, that's,
Direct direct brings its own challenges.
oh, it
Um,
does. It does,
it
especially
sure does.
when you're not really prepared or you have to live in the still the material aspect of it. Like I say, as as well intentioned as spirits are, they don't live in a body.
Right.
They don't have, even if they can, well, weird way to say it, but even if they can intellectualize the idea, and even if they
Mhm.
sense our emotions because they're temporary and our existence is temporary, and they know eventually we'll shed the material body and move on, they forget that you still have to experience this moment. You still have to be within this, and you still have the lack of certainty.
Right. The other thing is time is very much an earthbound concept.
Right.
And so, what you perceive as a long time or even a very, very short time, it doesn't make any difference to a spiritual realm. It's like
Yes.
it's just a thing. It's there and that's it. And time
Mm-hmm.
is immaterial. So it might feel
Oh,
like
that's right.
it's
Yeah. So
it
sometimes
might
when you
feel like it's
interact with
20
the,
years, it might feel like it's 20 minutes and it's all the same.
yeah. So it becomes funny. So what they say, okay, well, you can handle this. You've got the capacity to handle. Like, I don't doubt I can handle it. I understand I can handle the situation, but when you're living the situation, it still sucks. So sometimes it's like, could I gone a more conventional route? But I can't. It's one of those things where, that expression where, well, not expression, but that idea where people go, if I only knew then what I know now, you know? But I'm like, but I didn't know it then. And if I'd have known better, I would have done better. But I didn't know better, so I did what I could do at the time.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one. I see that on social media a fair
Mm,
bit too. If you could go back and tell
mm,
your 10-year-old self,
yeah.
or pick a number, what would you tell them? And
Mhm,
I'm always very curious about that, because what I'd like to know is not so much what would you say as what do you anticipate would happen.
mm,
And typically people are looking to avoid some pain that they experienced, but that pain is likely to have produced something really worthwhile in you now. So if you went back and avoided that pain with some information, or whatever it is you were planning
mm,
to do, then where are you now? Like, it's such an interesting question, because it's very short-sighted, and there's you don't even have to believe in, okay, well, if you change a thing, then the whole future
yeah.
changes. But just looking at your own personal experience, of course, if you don't experience those things, then who they made you into
Mhm.
doesn't happen. So you're a different person. Would that make you better, or would that stunt your growth? Like, what would you be doing with that? It's an interesting concept, and people spend some time with that.
Mhm.
Um, and it's kind of unproductive. It's also, just how many ways do you want to stunt yourself?
Yeah. Well,
I don't
and it's
recommend it.
funny, yeah. Without the experiences you went through, if you go back to before you had those experiences and you share what you've learned from it with your younger self's probably not going to have any idea what to do with that information.
Well, that's the other thing too, right? So it's one of those questions that doesn't honestly make a lot of sense when you examine what you expect the result to be.
Hmm.
Unless it's just a simple, shallow, idle curiosity, what do you think you'd say? But the reality is that's not a very helpful way of thinking. It's much more productive to look forward and say, who do I want to be? What is the point? Like, one of the things that I can offer up is, I want my life to have mattered. Now, how that looks is open to interpretation, but I want it to have mattered. By the time I leave this physical plane, I want to have made a difference. I shy off from using words like legacy, because I think it's grossly overused, and I don't
Yeah.
really think people mean what they think they mean. Um, it's just one of those words that kind of bugs me. But making a difference, yeah, I think we can all strive for that, if that resonates for you, if that's what
Yeah.
you want to do.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Because we've touched on this before. Like leaving a legacy, being famous, being known for something, or even or expecting that what you do is overtly seen on the world stage. But you don't know what effect you'll have, even if you just do things locally, because locally is where you live.
Right.
Like, regardless,
And
so you make your changes where you are. And if that happens to leak out into the world, that's great, because it probably will, because you make effect on one person and that person makes an effect on another person, and the dominoes fall, and you don't know. But the person to push the first domino may never get the fame. It might be someone else further down the chain. So you never know.
and the thought that you can raise, if you're raising your own vibration, then you're helping to raise that around
Right.
you. And to go into human design for a moment, which I mention on occasion, but if we're going to go into human design, 70% of the world's population are either a manifesting generator or a pure generator. Either way, the generator piece is important, because when that person is doing things in alignment, their generator, their sacral center, is producing a whole lot of energy that lifts everyone up around them. When you're out of alignment, that's not working right. The people that need lifting up don't get it. So take that human design piece and put it into a vibrational idea. And if you are raising your vibration, then you will be affecting the people around you in some way. Just like if you have a miserable person around you, right? Somebody just arrived in the office and they're in a bad mood and they're grumping about everything, everybody starts to get pulled down. That energy is just like, ugh, and now today sucks. And it was fine 10 minutes ago. And that's somebody's vibration affecting yours and you letting it, but that's a different subject. So your vibration, I think to aim to raise it is what is needed right now. On this planet on fire, what we need to do is raise vibrations so that we step out of that mess and into the direction we're supposed to be going in. It's a pivotal moment right now. There's an awful lot going on, and it could go either way. And I think it will go both ways. And it depends on which side of the equation you want to be on.
Yeah.
I'm going to recommend raising the vibration, which means looking to your future self for what's possible. What can you bring? What's your value? And I don't mean money. Money is a transactional thing, and that's cool. But what are you here for? What's your point?
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah. Trying to figure out, my dragon's looking for something.
Well, let me just read you another
but
card. I pulled another card while I was talking.
Oh, did you?
Cosmic Dragon.
Oh.
We dragons hold cosmic energy, and we can share this with your own ventures. Let us breathe our life-giving starfire into your dreams and see them come true. Boom.
Well, he gave a thumbs up. So, yeah, he gave a thumbs up. So, and he was looking westward from here. So,
there you go.
Not sure how we line up, but he was
yes, westward. I would be west.
You would be west of me. I just don't know if I'm facing in your direction. But he was like kind of, that the old when you're looking for kind of one of these things happening, scanning the horizon kind of a deal. So interesting.
And that's another thing. You asked me earlier on, like, what was my question? And sometimes it's not a question. It's, I'm in a process of something, and I'll just be playing with the cards, and then I stop at one. And so it's more than a question that informs what I'm going to pick. Yeah. So just as I was saying all of those things right then, I was playing with the cards, shuffling them, and that was the one that came up.
Yeah, because he also gave a thumbs up. So it's interesting to have the dragon in the background to be able to feel what it's doing and sense what's happening. And so as we're talking, he's like either patting me on the back going, yeah, that's good, keep going there. Or he's like, okay, no, move through this. Or he's like, okay, next thing. I'm like, okay. But yeah, he was looking westward, scanning the horizon. So I guess maybe he was looking at you then to see what was going on. I was wondering because something took his attention away from his producing duties.
Okay.
But then he gave a thumbs up when you showed the card, so possibly related, I guess. But it's interesting, right? So this is where I might as well put it this way. I don't know all the time how to connect events sometimes. And sometimes I just say whatever. If I don't understand it, I don't understand it. So a part of me is like, well, it makes sense that he was looking over to see what you were doing. But my expectation is also that I'd probably just sense him in your spot instead of him just looking in that direction. Because he did shift around spots a few times while we were talking. So hard to say. I don't know. It's interesting. Sometimes I try to figure out, I'll see spirits doing something. And I'm like, what are you doing? Then they're like, it's none of your business. Don't worry about it. Even when eventually it will be my business, they're like, it's none of your business right now.
Yeah, okay. So you really have to be prepared to go with direction.
Well, that's the thing, right? I've already, that's pretty much my well, not my pact. I don't think I formally ever made a pact, but that's my end of the bargain. I'm like, whatever you guys need me to do, just whatever. Just let me know. So, and a lot of times to keep my head out of the way, they just don't tell me until it's that time to do it. Sometimes they tell me ahead. Actually, it's interesting. Sometimes I'll get, lack of a better way of putting it, I get a briefing. It'll be like I'll become obsessed with something, and then I'll start checking that out. And then when the time comes, I'm prepared. Like I get prepped ahead of time. It might be just becoming obsessed with a story or becoming obsessed with a book or suddenly following a celebrity who looks like the person I'm going to be talking to, they need me to talk to. So when I see them, I'm like, okay, perfect. Now I get it. Now I see where this was going.
Interesting. So for the listener, you can hear that it can go in many different ways,
Yeah.
and sometimes one after the other, sometimes all at once, which is okay, you need to go lie down for a bit then. But
Well,
there's
yeah.
so many possibilities, you know,
But
and,
that's the thing, right?
there's times where I really like to use crystals a lot
Mm-hmm.
as well. But the interesting one with crystals is my husband is way better at picking out the right
Right.
crystals for things. So I have become used to going to him and saying, you know, what do I need for this? And there was sometimes I don't even have to ask. I was experiencing some stomach pain one day that was not related to anything that I could think of, but it was quite severe. And I had to lie down. And he arrived with the biggest amethyst crystal that we have in the house.
Mm.
And he said, here, hold this on your stomach, it'll help. And I was like, oh, okay, you know, I don't have any meds that are going to fix this, so sure. And you know, you can now attribute it to whatever you want to attribute it to, but I did that thing and I felt better within about
Well,
10 minutes or
yeah.
so.
I was gonna say that's the thing because there's a whole, group of people who like to make fun of the idea of people using crystals. But if
Sure.
you know how to use them, they are powerful. Like I said, when I was still learning with my human teacher, the one class we worked on crystals, I read her mind the whole class. She was like, "You're one step ahead of me. Quit it," but like in a joking way. But it was like, I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm hearing your thoughts before you put them out there, so I know what you want done before we do it."
And it can be, you know, the same crystal can affect different people
Well, that's
differently as well. Like I sometimes wear
yeah.
moldavite, and moldavite is a very powerful crystal that really works with energy. And some people will actually feel ill wearing
Mhm.
moldavite.
Well, that's
I
the
have
thing, right?
not, I have not had that experience at this time.
That's the thing, right? This kind of and the dragons are yeah. That's well. Let's hit on this one because it's always been my issue with crystals because I was taught everything is an individual. Anything that has basically some kind of sentience is an individual and will do things individually. But even if you don't go that far, just like you said, if so, you know, depending like so, all right, healing as an example, saying something blanketly heals doesn't help because if what you need to heal you is out of the purview of the rock that's supposed to be healing, then it's not going to heal you. Like, because if what's causing your illness is financial issues, as an example, all the healing stones that heal and work on your digestive system or whatever it is that's being thrown out of whack is not going to do the same thing as the crystal that aligns you up for financial success because that's really where your issue is coming from. So the
Right.
crystal will do the crystal that attacks a specific topic will heal you better than the crystal that's supposed to heal that specific body part, let's say,
Which is
because it's
why,
taking the source of the because it's actually taking dealing with the source of the issue.
which is why in our household, I will go to him and say,
Mm,
this is the situation. What do I need?
mm,
And he will typically he'll say, well, how am I supposed to know? And I'm just like, just go tell me. You know, don't worry about how you're supposed to
mm,
know. Just figure it out.
right.
And he'll come back with a couple of palm stones or something and
Mm,
say, okay, you need this one for this reason and that one for that reason. Put them here, put them there. And, you know, and then he goes back to writing his books. And I have the crystals that I need. And so far, he has been more in tune with crystals than me. I love them, but he's
Mm.
more in tune with them. So, that works in this household. And then for anything else, particularly if it's going to be plant-based, then that's more likely to be me, which is interesting because I am not a good gardener at all. I am not good
Neither
at
am I.
gardening,
Mm.
but I learned about essential oils like back in the 80s when it was barely a thing.
Right.
So, I've been working with those for an awfully long time.
Yeah. It's funny because again, back to the idea of the individual or the individual spirit or force, whatever you're working with, right? I know I've already kind of said this, but yeah, the individual piece you pick up is its own thing.
Hmm.
So even if it belongs to a group that has certain group qualities, the individual stone or the individual plant or whatever still has its own unique quality that it can do to help you. And it might be really good specifically helping you with one thing and not so much on someone else,
Right.
which also has a, I mean, you can even look at it from a material perspective. How you process chemicals depends how effective a medicine will be on you in the first place and your sensitivities to things. So, but
There's a
it's,
lot. There's a lot that goes into it.
yeah. I also, because I'm on this mindset too, I'm like, no, not yet. Not time yet for this one. I'm getting the on that one.
Okay.
A shushing noise there on it.
Okay.
Because, right, that's the thing. As much as we get out something out of this podcast by doing it, ultimately the podcast is for the people listening.
Hmm.
So whatever it is I intended to say is not yet time. And you know what? I can see that. If people aren't prepared to hear, especially when like, because this is for people beginning their awakening. I mean, it doesn't hurt people who have already, if they've already done their journey and they're listening too, is fine. Awesome. That's awesome too. But because a lot of this is about the people beginning their journey, even though sometimes I want to go really deep and get really into into the weeds and the muck and get into the real deep details, sometimes it's not time yet.
Right. And I think we cover a lot of ground that
Yeah.
is hopefully accessible now. And that's already a chunk. The fact that the person listening to this is even considering what we're talking about and listening to us without sort of ridicule or what have you already suggests a level of awareness that many people don't access at all.
Mm.
um, and here's something that just came to me to mention. My mother died last year. She was very healthy as far as anybody knew,
Right.
and she was still working because she loved to work. And she had just visited us in Colorado for 3 weeks. And then she went back to the UK, and
Mm.
6 days later, she died. But the difference occurred here in Colorado
Mm-hmm.
was fascinating. She arrived very full of fear, and she
Right.
had a lot of fear of death, and she had also fear of staying alive. Like she was worried about
Mm-hmm.
all of it
Right.
due to her age. And she talked so much about her fear of death that I was looking for a resource for her that she could access. And I had Eckhart Tolle books.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd sent her some videos from him because he does talk about death in a very positive way, right? So she'd liked those, and I happened to have some books of his. So I gave her those books. And the whole time she was here, anytime we weren't out sightseeing or something, she was buried in these books, just reading everything that she could find and writing copious notes. She
Mm-hmm.
wrote books of notes. And then finally, the day before she left Colorado, she sort of put her pens down and she said, I've got it. I understand it now. And she was just so calm
Mm-hmm.
and in a much better space. And then she left. And I guess 7 days from that point, she died very suddenly, very unexpectedly. Nobody was anticipating that at all,
Right.
and very quickly. So, big shock for everybody that was left here. But that shift was important.
Hmm.
I think she needed that in order to be able to transition the way she wanted to.
Yeah.
That might sound macabre and all the rest of it, but I've had a year plus couple of months to
Yeah.
process, and it has not been an easy process for me, but I'm the one left here, right?
Right.
Um,
That's true.
but that Eckhart Tolle thing and the notes and notes that she wrote and the devotion she had to
Hmm.
learning everything he had to say was her moment. That was her time to get a really important learning, which she received. So that was very cool. She never told me what it was, but she did tell me she got it.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
okay.
that's very important. It's the when you get a sense that you're going to pass, even if there's no reason to believe it, it is important to, I don't want to say get your ducks in a row because that's not what it is, but to make your peace.
Yeah.
The reason you have that awareness is so you can make peace with yourself. Like, not that it ties in exactly the same, but when my paternal grandmother, she asked me, she goes, "Does this the fear of death?" Like she was in her late 80s at the time, heading towards her 90s, and she was like, "Does fear of death ever go away?" And I'm like, I said, "Well, technically, it's not supposed to go away. As long as you're alive, you're supposed to want to fight to be alive. That's why you have the fear of death, to keep yourself alive and to make sure you don't just pass for no reason." I said, "But to my understanding, the only real, if you're looking for a cure for your fear of death, the only thing you can do is live a satisfied life, a life that you're satisfied that you live, because then when the journey is done, you can accept the end of that journey." I don't
No,
know what it did for her because after that time, I didn't really get to talk to her a lot because she moved and then I didn't live closer because I used to go see her once a week because she lived close to me. So I would go see her. And then she ended up living far away. So I didn't get a chance to see her as often. So I don't know what it did for her. I know she put on a brave face about it later,
right.
but I don't know if she really took, I don't know if it helped her go on, but it sounds like this helped your mother for sure.
Yeah. The other interesting thing about Mom's visit here, she was always very, very talkative and would
Mm-hmm.
talk to anyone all the time. And while she was here, her focus was to tell people how not to die.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally, she was telling anybody that would care to listen, don't retire, keep working, because if you retire, you'll die. And she was really giving this message to as many people as she could. And there was one person I saw just maybe 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, and she saw me and she said, "Oh, I remember seeing you with your mom. How is she?" And
Yeah.
it was very tough to answer that question, but I answered it, and she just stood there looking shocked, and she said, "But she was telling me how not to die." And I said, "Well, yes, she was. And now it's your turn to keep living."
Yeah.
Um, I don't know what else to say. And I kind of had to leave because I was still kind of emotional.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
yeah.
but such an interesting shift for her. And I really felt the shift. Like it was tangible when she got what she needed. So, but boy, she fought learning it. It took a
Yeah.
while,
Yeah.
but
But
she got
yeah, that's the joy of being like us. You see those changes, you feel them. So I almost like to put it like we have an unfair advantage because whereas people are either surprised or they're caught. I mean, not that you don't get caught flat-footed, as the expression goes, whenever something like this happens, but you kind of had a better sense of what she was like near the end because you sensed the shift, because you sensed the shift in her.
Yes, there was that. I also had a secret help, if you will, which is someone I know that does Akashic Records.
Mm-hmm.
She checked in with her within 24 hours of her passing. And the things she was telling me, only my mom and I would know.
Right.
Nobody else would know this. And so I understood that what I was hearing was genuine.
Mm.
And that put to rest an awful lot of things that come up when you're grieving, particularly in the early stages. I don't say it was made easy, but it was put it in a place I could understand it,
Mhm.
which is the best I think you can hope for at that time, because the transition is for everybody. It's not just for
Yeah.
the person that leaves. It's
Mhm.
everybody has a transition at that point,
Yeah.
because who you were and how you were is now different.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's
Oh, I've never said that before, so that was something somebody needed to hear.
well, there you go, because it's interesting. I mean, I still this is not unknown about me, at least with some people. But usually when someone passes, a lot of times either they come to me because they know I can hear them. So they'll talk to me. So for me, when someone passes, at least at the time, it's not the same. I like it's still sad because there's still a transition. The interaction is not the same.
Mhm.
It's not going to be the same again. I still have moments where like all my grandparents have been dead. Well, except for my paternal grandmother, the rest have been dead for 10 years or more. So it's like they're gone, but I still get those moments where even though if I want to, I can talk to them and I can still sense their presences and stuff. But you still get moments where they're not here physically. So all the physical interactions don't exist. All the new memories that everyone else is making, they're
Right.
there. When they're there. But not everyone can share in that moment again. So then it just becomes either you and them. So you kind of walk that world in between. So it's still a certain degree of sadness over it, even if you're aware of the people like
Hugely. No, the sadness, I mean, it's still there, and it was very, very much there. But I was given a way to cope with it
yeah,
that was really helpful. And I still, every now and then, will have a little conversation that's like, "Hey,
yeah,
about this thing," and I know if I'm getting an answer that's legit, because she was a very particular kind of person. She was unique in many ways,
yeah.
and anybody that knew her would say that right away. Her life experience kind of led her to be a little different to a lot of people, which may go some way to explaining why I am. But that's fine. But yeah, that shift was tangible. It was important, and it came up to mention it. So yeah.
What's good? I'm glad actually we talked about it. But there's something I wanted to add, but again, it's still not allowed to say it right now. I wanted to deal something a little bit about the mechanism of how this works, but I think the power of the moment, the feeling of it, is probably more important.
Yeah, mechanism is getting to a next level
Yeah.
thing.
Well, that's the thing, right? I guess we're allowed to talk about it. Not this particular mechanism, but just the idea. When I teach deeply into to the mechanism of it so that it's easy to do. And it's because once you learn the most essential mechanism, you start to see how the rest branch off and how the rest of the skills come in. And it's funny, and I don't know where to go from here. I know, like, I touched a little bit of it in the first season. That's kind of where I went, but the episodes weren't very long. And I know that wasn't the point of this podcast. I just wanted to give people a foundation to learn how to move forward. If they didn't get any kind of help, at least they had a general idea of where to start. So, and I know the rest of this podcast is not about the mechanisms unless some point we get compelled to teach about mechanisms. I mean, I do offer a class on it, but I'm not here to promote the class. That's not my point of this. Or maybe it is. I don't know. I'm not the one in charge of the show. I don't know. He's still expecting something. I don't know what it is.
Do you know if it's from me or from you?
Yeah, I don't. Well, he's looking at me, but
Okay.
I'm blocked, so I don't know. So I'm just going to assume it's not me. Not put
Okay.
pressure
Well,
on you.
then, if you did know what it was, what would you say next?
Still blocked, even for that one.
What's
Nice
your
try.
best guess?
You want to know what I'm seeing right now?
Yeah.
I'm seeing a void, basically a black hole.
Okay.
So I have no idea where to go from there.
Okay. Well, I'll go with what I've been putting together this sort of
Mm,
5-part video
right.
series that I'm going to put in my Facebook group. And it's a private group, so, people listening, don't bother Googling it. You have to be doing a
Yeah.
lot of it with me to get there.
Here's a thumbs up for this. So I'm assuming
Okay,
there's
cool.
something relevant here.
So the thing that I was been putting in this video a little bit is about habits that will change the quality of your life. And one of the pitfalls that we have to navigate through with pretty much all of it is emotional and mental overwhelm due to the black hole that is social media or technology generally. And when you wake up in the morning and you turn on your tech right away because you got to check that calendar and you need to look at your emails and yada yada, then you're basically committing an assault on your brain,
Mm,
which is not prepared. You're just waking up groggy, you got all these things going on, and you suddenly throw all this stimulation at it. Well, what comes from that is emotional overwhelm. You start to feel that fairly quickly, and that leads to the black hole of social media,
mm,
scrolling, watching video after video, etc., rather than being productive. And what it's doing to you at the same time is it's like you become a sieve, and the water going through the sieve is your energy, and it's just splatting everywhere. Like it's not focused because you are leaking energy, you're scattering it into this black hole of distraction. And the distraction we go for to numb the overwhelm. So rather than numbing the overwhelm, which is it's not even a fix, but it's a temporary pressure. It's a temporary pretend fix, if you will. Um, and the key to any of the habits that I'm doing this video series on, it's to not step into that black hole, to
right.
not fall into that, because especially right now, it's a very, very dark place. It's full of misinformation, it's full of hate and nastiness,
Mm,
a lot of dark energy going on in there. And when you step into that, you're inflicting it on your brain. How can you make good decisions or be productive from there? You can't, is the short answer. So that's the black hole that came up for me today, is technology. Is
right.
you literally get sucked in. Think Poltergeist movie. You get sucked
Mm,
into that TV, and TV people are here. You you're stuck in there, and it's very difficult then to be successful or to feel successful, however you define it. Um, so yeah, that's what I have on black holes.
mm. That's so it's interesting. So I was wondering if it was doing that whole thing of you got something to share. Oh, Mikhail's got something to share about what we're teaching, and I almost wonder if that was the goal of it. Yes and no, apparently.
That's what I have for black holes. That,
Yeah.
and literally, I was just working on that before. I had 2 webinars before coming onto this podcast
Right.
with you, and they were back to back,
Hmm.
and then this. So literally, the last thing I did before jumping into the very social media I'm talking about is to do these scripts, if you will. I haven't done the videos yet, but I might just do them live, whatever.
Right. Well, there's
We'll
that.
see.
Whatever comes. Yeah.
Exactly. There's no rush.
Sorry. There's a certain joy because when I'm teaching my class, because I'm pretty much purely channeling when I teach too. I give basically here's the outline of the class, and then I just channel.
Hmm.
This is what needs to be said because now this is about you specifically, the student. This is my overall for the program. Keep these notes in mind, but now here's what we're gonna tackle because this is what you need today, apparently. So, but this is the look I have too. This is the look of me on camera because I keep my head turning because I'm listening and I'm paying attention to what's being told to me to convey at the same time. And I'm like, okay. So now I'm trying to figure out what the dragon's saying. But it is interesting that this episode is about dragons, even though we didn't go really into depth about dragons. Although I keep referring to
Well,
dragon
the
persistence.
dragon energy is very powerful,
Mhm.
it's very protective, and it's another word for powerful. It's strong, meaning it's big.
Yeah.
So anything you do with, through, or near that energy is going to be impactful. And I think that has kind of flowed through the podcast so far. We've talked about a lot of things that are impactful.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just how the energy has shown up is how we see it.
It's funny because I had these whole ideas. I was like, these are the dragons I worked with. I had books on dragons. Here's what I learned from that. This is how I encountered this dragon. This is how I encountered that dragon. It's like, that's not what we're doing today.
Well, maybe they don't need to be seen as dragons per se, but just an awareness of
Yeah.
the that protective and powerful energy.
Mm.
Because it's big.
Well, it made me wonder if maybe someone listening, in this episode might be having dragons trying to communicate with them or one or another, whatever. And I thought, well, maybe this episode will help ease the transition because one of the things I run into with people is that they're afraid to talk to spirits, you know.
And as you were talking, I was just thinking what often happens is people have a story about dragons,
Hmm.
funnily enough, that is, that's a childish thing and you need to leave that alone now. And that's a societal prejudice, and
Hmm.
you can follow that if you want to, but it the image I get is of shackles
Right.
when you follow that kind of you can't do this because you've had a certain number of birthdays. It's like
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. And the number of birthdays you've had are completely immaterial. It just means you've had that many opportunities to learn stuff, to get things wrong and to fix them, or to do things differently. So that's it as far as birthdays are concerned,
Yeah.
from my perspective. Every now and then somebody asks me, "How old are you?" I never ever answer that question because it doesn't matter. But people will get a certain image of how they think you are based on your
Yeah.
number. I mean, how
Hmm.
many times do you hear as a kid, act your age?
Yeah.
What the hell does that mean?
I'll share a story on that one for you. My sister, one time, she was mad at her children, and there was about a year, 2 years and a half maximum range gap between them. So the three of them, she has four kids now, but three of them, she was saying like, talk to your niece and nephews there, tell them to act their age. And I looked at them, and I looked at her, and I said, they're talking back, they're being contrarian, they're being moody, talking back to you. I
They
said
are
they are
acting
acting
their
their
age.
age.
Yeah, and that was very savvy of you to say
Yeah.
because what we typically mean by that is don't behave that way,
Yeah.
behave the way I want you to. But we attach it to an age,
Yeah.
right? And you're old enough to know better.
Yeah. That's
That's
one.
a fascinating thing that gets thrown around. Like, what the hell is that? And then depending on the age you're at, it's like, well, shouldn't you have done this by now? Or shouldn't you be doing that?
Hmm.
And people have an agenda for how your life is supposed to look. And I find
Yeah.
that very interesting because that agenda means nothing to anybody, including them, right? They just have this idea and they're trying to put it on you, but it's not yours. You don't have to have it.
That's true.
And that
Yeah.
that kind of came up with the whole yeah, thinking of birthdays and all those things. Like, it's immaterial, truly doesn't matter. When I worked as a nurse, I saw people in their 90s who were very young.
Hmm.
They this one woman in particular, funnily enough, she used to talk to spirits, and she'd sort of tap on the wall behind her and have this conversation with this spirit,
Hmm.
and she was always laughing. And she'd come into the hospital because she got swelling in her lower limbs.
Right.
And it took a couple of weeks to get her sorted out and,
Hmm.
put her on diuretics and what have you. And she walked out of that hospital with no problem. Her daughter looked older and had a cane,
Oh yeah.
but mom didn't. And the other thing with mom was her sense of humor was beautiful, totally intact.
Hmm.
She was always trying to pair up the nurses, with the doctors and all this kind
Right.
of thing. She wanted to be a matchmaker.
Yeah.
But we had one doctor on staff who honestly thought he was God's gift to women and
Mhm.
everybody else. Like he was really very, very full of himself. And he was doing a discharge check on her. One of the things he needed to do was run his fingers either side of her leg from top to bottom
Mhm.
to check if there was any nerve damage, was the feeling equal
Right.
and so on. And as he was doing this check, she sort of slid down in her chair a little bit and he yelled at her, "Can you feel that, Ethel?" And she said, "Oh, I can, and it's wonderful. It's been years since I've had a man's hands on my
Yeah.
thighs." And he went puce with embarrassment. And the nurses behind him, myself included, were all doing a little jig and giving her a round of applause
Mhm.
because she sorted him out. Anyway, that is to say, she was 99, I believe, and she
Mhm.
left the hospital walking, no aid. Her
Yeah.
daughter, in her 60s, needed a cane.
Mm.
Daughter had a very old attitude.
Right. Well,
Mom, however, I reckon she got another 20 years to go easy. She was
well,
having a good time.
that's the thing. Yeah. I was running the risk of putting the mechanism to it, but I still wanted to touch on the idea that, yeah, when you if you view yourself as old, you start to act old.
Hmm?
And so if you think being old means to be unhealthy and it means to be slow and all that stuff, then you slow down. Like
Yeah.
it's incredible how much that makes a difference.
Another thing that came up just today was there was a woman on a coaching call who said, "I have this opportunity and it's amazing. I can join this group and I'm going to run all kinds of things." It was like big financial opportunity, but it was
Mhm.
also a big step in the direction she was interested in. And she said, "But I'm 61. I'm not sure if I should do this because all my friends are slowing down now and retiring." And like myself, and I think everybody else in the room kind of tilted our heads and were
Mm.
like, what's your question?
Yeah.
What's the problem? Um, and her problem was at 61, should she not do this? And
Mm.
and the answer has to be, well, what do you think? Because it doesn't
Yeah,
matter what anybody else thinks.
that's right.
So that numbers thing, if you're in your 80s and you want to start a new business, knock yourself out. And if you're 20 and you want to do something, you want to play with stuffies, knock yourself out. And if you believe in dragons throughout your life, go for
Mm.
it. They're there.
That's the thing, right? Like I've gotten back, well, I never fully left this idea, but I'm back into the idea that play is important. Because really, like when you see kids play, the less structured it is. What are they doing? They're learning.
Oh, 100%. Yes. That is
So
where a kid learns. That is their work.
so that's the fundamentals. If you want to learn something and keep your life exciting and do new things, you have to learn to cast aside, I'm an adult, I don't play anymore, kind of
Hmm.
thing. Play is always there. Play is the way we learn. Play is the way. In fact, like I haven't had time for it, but I'm always trying to learn a new language. And then
Hmm.
I end up with like basically a hodgepodge of all these languages that I don't speak with any fluency, but have a grasp for how they work. And one of the things I was starting to think, well, uh, I had started is I started downloading apps for kids to learn a language
Hmm.
because it's done as a game.
Right.
There's little contests to do, little exercises to try. They're actually in form of a contest. And and sometimes the letters are big and bold and they have you do things to memorize that letter in a more simplified fashion or that character in a more simplified fashion, depending on the language you're trying to learn. And I thought, well, if we can teach kids to speak this way, what's wrong with an adult trying this? You know,
Nothing at all, because you'll learn better if you're having fun doing
that's
the
right.
learning. So, yeah, I think sometimes we attribute a physical limitation to something that requires no limitation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the overall message from the coach who was afraid to be or yeah, I think she was coaching. She was afraid to do this next step that had been offered to her
Mhm.
and embodied everything she was looking for. And she was afraid to do it because she thought people might be laughing at her because of her age or something. And it was just
Yeah.
like, that's called expertise by that time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, what? Why would that be a limit? That's just.
Well,
But so many of us buy into it, right? You can't
and
do that. You're this age. You can't.
yeah,
You must do that. You're that age. It's
yeah.
like I
It's
don't
funny
know,
at the risk
really.
of going back into old-fashioned ways of doing things, but at some point you'd be the elder of the tribe or one of the elders of the tribe, and people would expect you to know things. So you would have, especially if you're doing something like coaching, that's hitting 60, 61. You're starting to get into this. People are expecting you to do these things in all honesty. They're not expecting you to stop doing things and retire and not do anything. At most, they're expecting you not to do intense physical labor, but they're expecting you to have wisdom to share with people.
And even that is a limitation that other people will
Yes.
impose on you. If you're
Mhm.
able to do it, then go for it. Why would you not?
Yeah. Well,
There's
that's
absolutely no reason why not. And that's something I would invite the listener to consider is when you have a limitation, whose limitation is it? And do you actually want to wear that? Because it's probably not yours. And even if it is yours, it came from somebody else because you weren't born with limitations. You were born with opportunities, and the question is, how are you going to manifest them? And it might not look the same as other people's. That's kind of the point of us being individual, is that the
mhm.
path isn't the same. So instead of looking outwards at what other people think and how other people say it should go and what the how is for everything, that's not actually important. The important part is, what are you here for? What are you prepared to show up and do? What are you willing to risk?
Mhm.
And when you fall flat on your face, how quickly are you going to jump up and say, cool, let's do it again? And go do something a bit different, but do it again and be prepared to fail because that's where we learn the stuff. Think of teenagers. The teenager that's never allowed to fail because the parent always steps
Mhm.
in and says, I have a better way, or
Mhm.
no, you have to do this. That teenager, when they leave home, are going to launch into every kind of experimentation, get themselves into a world of trouble. And because they're not at home anymore, nobody's there to save their butt.
That's
So
right.
with teenagers, my suggestion there is let them make their decisions, let them have their experiments and their failures while they're at home, and
Mhm.
you can help them through it afterwards. But unless it's a life or death thing, and obviously if they say, hey, I want to try drugs, well, you need to have a conversation about that because that's not going to end well. But otherwise, decision making, let them make their decision. That's their job.
Mhm.
They're adults in training and they need to get the training.
Yeah.
So, and we learn that we lose that, sorry, during childhood. We lose the ability to rely on ourselves for decisions when parents or society step in and say, no, you have to do it this way, or this is the right way, or I have a better way. However the terminology is, that undermines the self-confidence. And then that person is always looking externally. Am I the right age for this? Do
Yeah.
I have the right looks for this? Am I the right size for this? Am I the right, whatever metric
Mhm.
for this?
Yeah.
None of that's important. None of that is important. This physical world is here for a while. You have a body, work with it.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny. It's not completely related, but I was asked today because my student was exploring different ideas. Uh, the first one, when who's I said, now go out and so she came across something about the witch's mark, which depending on where you think it comes from and stuff like that. So she asked me, she says, "Do you have a witch's mark?" And I said, "Well," said I says a witch's mark is usually a deformity or some weird mark that you might have. For some people, it might be they have red hair or some kind of red in their. So I said to her, I said, "Well." got a club foot, so that's a that's a birth defect. I've got some marks. I don't know if you can you get whatever the hell this thing
Oh
is,
yeah.
a bit more. And I'm like, and I used to have red in my beard, but I mean, like, I've got the marks, like the ones that are traditionally given to magic users. They said that you have some kind of potential for magic. So, like, I got them. But I said the whole thing, like, especially because she asked a witch's mark, which, as far as I understand, that actually, well, no, I'm trying to think. Witch's mark specifically, I think, started with when they started doing witch trials.
Right.
So I'm like, well, one, that's bullshit. So don't worry more about witch's marks. I said, but I says, if you look at the rest of the stuff, the bird defects and all that kind of stuff, those are things that can, depending on what area you live in, can isolate you. And therefore, it gives you an opportunity to become more introspective and more contemplate the important things in life. So I said, there you go. And that's the foundations to starting your whole magical spiritual journey. So I said, it's not so much that they mark you as being magical, and as much as they provide an opportunity for you.
That's an interesting take. Yeah. There was so much, the witch trials were basically any woman that stood her ground or was deemed a threat because she was able to heal people or, any number of things. A woman could be accused of witchcraft simply by being a woman. Um, and often was. And so a lot of people who'd done nothing ever were being burned, but also witches who were practicing witchcraft. What is wrong with healing somebody using herbs or bringing energies to help? Like, what's wrong with that? Um, Nothing, but it was a period of time where that was the fashion. And you know what? We're seeing exactly that now in
Yeah.
this world today. There is a version of a witch hunt going on,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically if you're Jewish, then there are places where you are not safe. And think about that. Why? Like, on what grounds? And the whole thing of tying that to a particular country is nonsense. It doesn't hold up at all. You are targeting people who might never have been there, let alone anything else. Certainly can't vote for the politicians and
Oh,
have
yeah.
nothing to do with what goes on. So
There's some
that,
interesting history there, when you bring that up.
but that is the current witch hunt.
Yeah. There's what was I gonna say? Not exactly that, but on the whole thing of which is the whole starting with the witch hunts in the first place, before that period of time, literally the church did not care. You could have been a witch and the church wouldn't have cared. It's only when, so to my understanding of the history, is that it goes like this. Whenever there's an ebb, right, in the popularity of the church, there needs to be an enemy.
Mm,
And when the witch hunts came, because people were going to see witches for help and not the priest, because this is the thing, right? A priest is essentially a witch in some fashion. Like they should know all those things too. Any anyone who's basically the spiritual leader of whatever place they're in, they're supposed to know medicine. They're supposed to understand human behavior. They're supposed to be able to communicate with spirits. They're supposed to do all those things. That's their job. And
hmm
when you don't do that, people stop following you. And then they go back to the traditional people who are doing those things, which is we want druid, you want shaman, whatever. People go back to those people because the church is not providing that, even though the church came in and they got their followers. But now, because the church isn't doing those things, followers are like, well, you know what? This is part of our life before. We're going back to them because you're not providing that service. So forget you. And then that's when it became a problem. And that's when the witch hunt started. And then the witch hunts kind of grew into a whole thing where people were accusing people just because they didn't like them and whatever.
hmm
All all the stuff that kicks in right whenever a movement starts, whatever.
Right.
Always the opportunists who come in and they fan the flames. But it becomes something like that. It becomes the idea of no one cared. You were fine to do your witchcraft. You were fine to be a healer. You were fine to give the good energies. That was all good. was only when it started basically affecting the church's standing that it became an issue, and then it became a witch hunt.
Right. Yep. No, our history as a human race is interesting and frequently violent. Um, and people's denial over it is fascinating as well. I mean, to be living in real time with an event like that is deeply unnerving and also kind of eye-opening, because the people who would look at the Holocaust, for example, and say, well, I wouldn't have done that, and I would have done this, this, and this, are probably now the same people who are actually a big part of the problem, and they don't see it.
Well, that's the thing, because they don't see what leads to that situation.
And they don't see their role in it. They don't see what they're doing, and it's kind of mind-blowing. But also what's currently happening is a veil over a veil of illusion over
Mhm.
what's really there is thinning to the point of translucency. And so we're starting to see sort of the human race, certain parts of it at least, as they always have been. It
Mm.
just wasn't obvious before.
Well,
And
that's the thing.
that's a world altering, a worldview altering thing to have happen. And I think that's where a lot of people have dissonance right now, is they're looking at what's going on around the world in a number of places, and it's just like, that's not what I thought it was. That's not how I thought it would go. That's not what I understood to be real. And the reality is, or at least the current reality is, that, yeah, actually, that's a thing. And you're just seeing what was already, always there. And that is unnerving. So a lot of people are getting depression, anxiety, and I can fully see where that comes from. And a big part, to circle back to the black hole,
Yeah,
is you got to limit your time in that black hole.
you do.
Really limit your time and choose what you inflict on yourself wisely, because it can derail all your plans. It can derail all the things you're working on if you get into that black hole and absorb the stuff that's out there. Because right now it's pretty awful in, and like, so many places. I'm trying to think of one where it isn't right now. Don't have it yet.
Yeah, it's a thing. I will play devil's advocate for a second. Like any tool, it in and of itself is not the problem. The social media itself is not the problem. It's how we handle social media is the problem, I would argue. In the sense of, like, when I was younger, right? 70s, 80s, the thing was, oh, TV rot your brain. But I'm like, I watch a lot of educational television. What
Oh
are you
yeah.
talking about rot your brain? Like, I'm learning. I was ahead in school for years because I watched educational television. So I'm like, how is it's not rotting my brain? I'm performing better. Like, if this is a rotted brain, I'm doing pretty good.
So the thing with
Yeah.
social media is, when you spend a lot of time on it, it literally does rewire the brain. They can see
Yes.
this with scans. So that is a fact.
Yeah. And I
It's,
will argue, unlike television, there is a very, what do you call it, an immediate response that
yes,
television doesn't have.
yes. No,
So every
social
time there's a
media,
ding, every time there's a like, every time, yeah, it has ways of creeping into your brain that television never had the power to do.
social media is a very different animal to
Mhm.
TV, because also there's the algorithm that chooses what you get to
Yeah.
see, and it will throw things at you to see what your response is. And that can head you down a path
Yeah.
that's not one you might like, but the algorithm takes you there.
Mhm.
It's set up that way.
Yeah.
So you end up, social media in particular, it has become a very dark place. And you've also got a lot of fake accounts, bots, all this kind of thing, who are manipulating how people think about something by
Yes,
telling them what they think before they get a chance to form an opinion.
that is true.
That's happening a lot. Like, there's so much illusion going on that certainly there are some good elements there.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I mean, I use social media to let people know about my coaching, for example, but so I'm not on it. What I'm saying though is you've got to be in control
Yeah.
of how
Well, that's
much
why I
and
mentioned
when,
it, right? That's why I mentioned it
when
because
you're on it.
yeah, because like I run into this situation. I'm on TikTok and my page is loaded with herbalists, artists,
Mhm.
craftsmen, whatever. And then the occasional things will trickle in, but mostly it'll be people commenting about a trend that's happening. And I'm like, this trend is not showing up on my page. I'm hearing about it peripherally because someone I'm following it brings it up. But I'm like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. This doesn't show up on my page.
Right, and that's a careful curation
Yeah.
of
Well, that's
what you're involved with, but
mhm.
many people don't have that. And so when they open it up, it's a black hole of things.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, because I learned that lesson from when I was a kid, right? Saying I used to watch educational television, and it gave me a lot of advantages in school. So when I came onto social media, I did the same thing. I'm like, well, okay, this is like television has the opportunity to rot my brain, but like television, I can also use it to my advantage. So that's where I tend to go with it. So yeah, that's one reason I brought it up because in our space, right, the witches and wizards world, is that it's not about being afraid to go out into the world. It's about knowing how to use the world to your advantage. And in this case, even something like social media, you can use to your advantage.
I
So it's
would
one reason
even
I
say
brought it up.
especially, I would
Yeah.
even say especially something like social media because it does take your energy and it takes your
Mhm.
focus. And how many people have what could be diagnosed as ADD now that probably didn't have it a few years ago, but they've developed it over time because of the amount of social media they've consumed. And it's an easy way to numb the brain from, I'm tired from work, so I just need to go play my game, or I just need to, scroll this
Mhm.
particular platform. And it kind of is, it's a distraction, but it's also overwhelming the brain with a lot of
Yeah,
images very, very quickly.
it is doing that for sure.
And so that's the effect that you need to be aware of and limit. I'm not saying that people should not use social media because that's wildly unrealistic. Um,
Mm.
and I don't know that that's particularly helpful. Although I do know that some people I'm aware of who don't use social media seem to be awfully happy about it. So there is that. But it's more a case of being aware of when you allow
Mhm.
that in. So as I
Yeah,
mentioned earlier, not doing it first thing in the morning. So if you can spend the first 30 minutes, 30 minutes to 60
Mhm.
minutes not looking at your phone,
Yeah.
not looking at the computer, but actually, go for a walk, have breakfast, have a shower, um, meditate, do
Yeah.
whatever you want to do. An hour can go by awfully quickly, but that gets your brain awake and ready to be productive. Whereas if you jump straight into social media or any other technology, right, like your emails or your calendar, then you
Right.
start to get overwhelmed really quickly because your poor brain isn't awake yet.
Hmm. So I was just confused by my computer there. Just trying to figure out how long we've been doing this for. And then the time, because I had this page open long, I had this Zoom open longer than I had the call started. So it was like I was just got confused there for a second.
Aha.
Not necessary for the reader to listeners to know about that, but that's just because I was staring off on the side of the screen there. It looked like I was lost in thought.
Yeah, you were looking off to the side with a frown on your face. So I was like, what's
Yeah.
going on there?
No, our conversation is good. It has nothing to do with our conversation. I'm enjoying our conversation, actually. Yeah, what was I going to say? No, still, it's not time to end yet. But I did distract myself by looking at the time.
I think with the social media stuff,
Yeah.
it's a case of it's not so much the villain as villains
Mm.
use it. And
Yes.
you need to be aware that not everything you see or you read is true. And especially when it comes to TV things and photos. I mean, I have been in a place where there were a dozen, maybe 15 people who were loudly protesting something, and TV cameras came in and they focused in on these people. And then I saw that. I was there physically at the time. And then I saw it later on TV. And the way they kind of manipulated the camera and moved it around, it looked like it was a much bigger group. And they were talking about this massive protest and da, da, da. And I swear to you, there was not more than 15 people there, tops.
Yeah.
I think less. But it was presented to people as though there's this huge problem, and here are these people protesting, and and they were vocal, yes, but did they try and get in anybody's way or do any harm to anybody or anything? No, they were
Mm.
just loud, and
Yeah.
they were protesting. But what we got shown was not what was real, because I was there, and at that moment I remember seeing it on TV and saying,
Mm.
whoa, hold the phone.
Yeah.
Like, how many things have I watched on TV and believed to be true because, well, it's a video, it must be true. No, that
Well,
is not
that's
the case.
yeah. Well, what gets even more scary is that so there's a practice in journalism where you can be talking about a particular subject, but let's say, okay, you're on television, so you're on broadcast news, where the video playing in the background has nothing to do with the situation at hand. It's just footage from another scenario, but it fit the narration they're telling you, so they use it. So when you're watching it, not knowing this is a practice, you're thinking what you're seeing in the video is actually what's happening in that place at that time, and it has nothing to do with it. It might not even be that place at that time. Like it
Right,
might be a completely different geographic location. Like you might be talking about something in the Middle East, and you're talking about Iraq, and then they're giving you something from Saudi Arabia, or they're giving you something from Syria, or
yep.
it's close enough. The people
Right,
watching
and
won't know the
and people
difference.
don't know
Yeah.
what they're looking at, because my experience is that by and large the ones who are yelling loudly have no idea what they're yelling about. But during COVID, we had a loss of sense of purpose for a lot of people. We
Mm-hmm.
had a loss of social structure, and there was a lot of negativity that came up around that, like neighbors who were willing to rat
Yeah.
out their neighbors for not wearing a mask and that kind of thing. Like, ooh, I'm hearing a little Nazi mentality here, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm very happy to rat out this neighbor. Just wow, that happened in a hurry. So that's one
Mm-hmm.
of those things where it was always there. We just thought it had gone. It didn't. Um,
No, it's yeah,
but so
a
many
very
people who lost their sense of purpose feel that they found one now. And so they're jumping into it and yelling very loudly about it and being terribly important. But the truth is, if you ask questions, they don't actually have any substance behind it, other than what they've seen on very clearly, evidently biased TV shows that have an agenda. So
well,
it's
that's the
pretty
thing.
interesting.
It falls down to that, and it's interesting. It's like the political idea of when you see someone in a different political spectrum than you, or a different part of the spectrum than you, saying something, you can automatically tell right when the person's being deceptive, but you don't catch those same tricks being used when someone's on your side of the spectrum. I noticed that when I was
Yes.
younger, right? I was like that. It was like, oh, well, this person is clearly lying, right? And then I wouldn't catch it right away on the same side that agreed with me. It was only as I started experiencing new things, and then I started to go, well, hold on a second. Now I'm starting to see you guys now. Like I finally clued in on one event. I was like in my early 20s, and I can't remember what it was, but it happened. Something happened, and I clicked in, and I went, oh, well, this is my side's equivalent of what I was picking up, no problem on their side. You know,
Right.
I saw that that person was promising something, but wasn't keeping their promise. But because it was their side, that's fine. I know what they really meant when they said those things. And then then I just started because I was curious. If I can, I think what happened is I'm catching this so quickly on that side. Is there something I'm missing on my side? And then I started paying attention with the same degree of scrutiny I would give someone on a different on a different side of the political spectrum. And then I started to notice, wait, it's happening on my side too, but I just never noticed it because I would say, well, I know what they meant, you know,
Right.
as
And
opposed to
right
really
now,
starting to,
I'm in an interesting spot there, because I am genuinely so far on the fence
mm,
politically. I am the fence. Like I'm,
yeah,
I'm literally, I don't favor one over the other in the US, which is where I'm
mm,
currently living. I don't favor one over the other. I don't like either of them. And the position I'm in is I see both of them and the stuff they're doing. And it's just, wow, there isn't one to pick. But what I find interesting is when people talk about their parties, the ones they identify with, they're very prepared to yell about it and tell you what an idiot you are because you don't agree with them. But when I have said to people, okay, hold up, tell me what's good about your people. Why do I want to vote there? Because I truly don't have an affiliation. So tell me why I want your guys. And they'll start answering with, well, the other one's this, it. No, no, no. I don't want to know what's wrong with the other guys. I want to know what's good about your guy. And so far, not one person has been able to have a conversation with me on that. They kind of make dark, foreboding type warnings about if I don't go with their person. But they're not able to tell me what's good about them on either side. It's the same. So it's really interesting, and I have no idea what the hell I'm going to do come November, and I have to vote because I want to vote. I want to have my voice heard. I just don't know what I want to say.
Well, that's the thing too.
Nobody's.
For us, it's next year, and me too. I'm like, I have no
Yeah,
idea.
I've looked at what you guys have, and frankly, no, thank you either.
Okay. Well, that's the thing for me too. Like, I've looked at all the parties, even the ones that seem better than others, have their own issues, and and I've already gone through a few minority governments to have bills passed that shouldn't have passed, and then have the other parties complain about it. It's like that wouldn't have passed without you guys. You guys had to vote for it to pass, so don't sit here and complain in something you were complicit about.
Yeah, it's a hot mess, but the way people are responding to it is a big part of how it continues to happen.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting, because everybody's just yelling and nobody's actually looking at, well, why is your guy good?
Yeah.
Why is that person better? And not because the other one's so bad. Okay, got that. Anybody can get that message. But what's the benefit to going with the person that you propose?
Yeah.
And I'm not hearing any benefits yet.
Yeah.
I've heard nothing.
What I
Which is
find
pretty
fun,
wild.
yeah, is
People
that
get very upset about it, but
yeah,
but they don't have anything to tell me that would persuade me one way or the other.
yeah. And that what I find where people get even more angry is when you're on your normal side of the political spectrum, but you defend something that happened on the other side of the political spectrum because it made sense to defend it, because you're looking at it from a rational perspective. People on your side get so mad at you for protecting that, for saying no, no, that was actually reasonable, and then they get
I,
mad at you thinking, what? When did you jump on that side? I never did. This still does not appeal to me, but I
right.
get what happened there and I understand why it's that way.
Yeah, it's we really do live in
Yeah.
very
And then to get
interesting
even
times.
worse when you criticize your own side because you see them doing something.
Yeah, and people also don't like it when you say I don't have a side.
Yeah. Well,
That
that's the
makes
thing, right? I've long
then
since lost my
they're
side
like,
there because
what's wrong with you that you don't have a side? I said, I am not the problem.
hmm,
It's not me. It's the choices that are in front of me that are the problem. And while we're here, why don't you explain to me why yours is a good choice? And then
but
they don't have it. So
and it's even funnier when you realize people who are supposed to be your side aren't. Like I would argue, North America, we don't really have much in the way of a left government. We have people who pay lip service and do a few things, but no one is really to the left that much. We're like either in the center or center right or far right, with the occasional small bunch of people maybe left of center. But
maybe
the
in
Overton window
Canada.
push pretty much everyone either to the center or to the right. Even in Canada, we have
No,
some people lip service too,
I think
but the
maybe in
policies are
Canada
still
because here in the US, the left are so far left they're almost right.
yeah,
And yeah, there's a lot of what I can say, the perception of how you thought a party was and who they stood up for and all that
right.
kind of thing actually isn't true. And that's a big part of, oh, scratch the surface, and now we're seeing something very, very different. And
Yes.
the people who will move alliance, and they'll move their favor, shall we say, according to the loudest group's wishes, because they're afraid of losing votes. That system has nothing to do with the benefit of the people. Any people. Like, that is not designed for benefit. That is designed for power. And again, it comes from a dark place. It doesn't come from there's no light in that transaction, in that situation. So, the governments that we have options between in most countries around the world right now, you got a dark side or a dark side. And which dark do you choose, and why? And are you prepared to deal with it once you've chosen it? And that's my problem.
That's
I'm not particularly prepared to deal with either of them. So
that's what I mean. Even here in Canada, the people who claim to be not so much the dark are just a different flavor of dark, and they don't realize it.
exactly,
Like,
exactly. They are self-righteous, but they are not any improvement. And that's I wasn't expecting to go into politics, but here we are.
no, but yet the dragon still was fine with it.
Cool. Well,
So,
it's a very, again, big energy, right? And there's a
well,
lot going on right now.
yes, and it affects how the world works, and that's part of. Can't please make me say this one, but that's part of what I'm teaching is the people are making decisions, so people have to learn to be able to counteract that, and that's part of the course. It's not the main goal of the course, but part of it is having those tools to look when people are doing that and say, yeah, no, that's not what you're presenting to me. You're giving me something else, because the point is to kind of make people at least bulletproof enough to be able to take themselves out of the equation long enough to see they're trying to sell me A, but really what you're giving me is H, and H is not in my best interest.
Right, or anybody's.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I can bring WildFit into this at this
Yes.
point, because the food industry are literally poisoning people with the chemicals that they put into the food. Canada's a bit better than the US, but not that much. Don't
No,
get me.
not much.
It's not that much. And the food industry are putting in so many chemicals, and they know that it's causing harm to people. They don't particularly care. Plus, their buddies in the pharmaceutical industry are able to maintain people in their ill health by producing more and more drugs. So, how can you make a good decision when your brain is fed by chemicals? How can you possibly process all that's going on in an effective way when you're built by chemicals? And if you look at the foods that people buy, I differentiate between food and food products.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the middle of the supermarket is all products, and they all look shiny, and they have the taglines and all of that make the casual observer and shopper think, oh yeah, this is a healthy option. Must be good. It's got less sugar in it.
Yeah.
God help us, it's going to be full of, all kinds of chemicals instead. But people living on this cannot function optimally. You cannot make good decisions from there. And it all feeds into the systems that we're dealing with right now politically. So that's one of the reasons why I love WildFit, and I'm passionate about coaching people with it, is to get them to a place where they are made of better stuff, if you will. The food they're eating is actually food, and it's not full of all the chemicals, the genetic modifications, and so on. And a little rant occurs to me right now that I will throw at you. And that is I think it's the Academy of Endocrinologists. There's two organizations for endocrinologists who have fairly recently decided that they are going to take the word obesity and change it to adiposity-based chronic disease, or ABCD for short.
I've heard of this. Yeah.
So for me, first reaction was, that's really insulting my intelligence to do the ABCD thing. Like, seriously, that's what you've got? But also, in one fell swoop, by doing this, Now, you might take the side that, oh, but it's less judgmental and da-da-da. Bullspit. People are judgmental. Titles don't make the difference. It's the people who use them. So that's a nonsense argument. But what they have done in one fell swoop is made obesity into a disease, and a chronic disease at that, which opens the doors wide for the pharmaceutical industries to make every kind of medication and supplement imaginable for this disease. Then the insurance companies have to pay for it, which means everybody's premiums go up. The doctors are more inundated. The broken healthcare system crumbles further. And while all of that is going on, the food industry, who are causing this problem in the first place, get off scot-free. Whoa, am I mad? And the organizations who are doing this name change, they are, of course, private organizations. So they are not answerable to anybody. So who's paying them? We don't know, because they don't have to say.
That's right.
So that is something that, I could hardly speak on the subject for the first few days when I saw what was happening, because I see why they're doing it. And they're not doing it so that people who are carrying too much fat feel better about themselves. No, that's what the body positive movement's doing. And they're not helpful either, actually. They're going way the other direction. And yeah, that's, health is health. And that's what we need to focus on. It's not the appearance, but, these things all get obscured, right? And then you get the diet industry stepping in with all their band-aids. And it's just like, it drives me nuts. I'm so mad about that whole setup. And, here's WildFit, like batting in the corner there, trying to let people know what's going on. But the opposition is huge.
That's true.
And that's a really big one. So I am mad about the adiposity-based chronic disease on so many levels, all at once.
That's crazy. That's a weird thing. But you know what? This is a good place to wrap it up with some passion.
Okay.
Something to remember.
Oh, the fire element is with me on this one. I am literally mad as fire. Yep.
Even the dragon's with you on this one, and that's why he wants to wrap it up here. So the last thing people hear is this, and they're staying in that idea.
Okay.
Before we say goodbye, let's gotta think of what's a good assignment for this episode. We've touched on a lot of things. We've touched about trying to think, but what matters, or what is the key to take away? I think probably the key to take away from this is probably about being really aware about things around you. And
I was going to say, be aware of how you respond to the technology you use. And maybe try a day or two differently and see how you respond to that, because this is where the learning's at.
Hear that, listeners? Mikhail has got the assignment for this one.
Yep. Again, got my passion going.
Yep. So for at least till the next episode, what would you say? Like, what did you say before? Half an hour in the morning? Don't touch your social media till 30 minutes to 60 minutes?
At least 30 minutes, ideally an hour. And if that varies day to day, that's okay too. Pay attention to that. Did you do better on an hour than you did on 30 minutes, or is it the same difference? Like, pay the awareness that you were talking about, the attention, really important, because we're going to be bringing that to everything you do. That came from somewhere.
There you go. And that's the stuff. So that's where we're going to end this one. So once again, I'm Daniel Dubois.
And I'm Michaela Gaffenstone.
So until next time.